Hello and welcome. Today I'm going to be explaining in very basic terms how to play Magic the Gathering. Now as a medium we will be using Magic the Gathering Arena, which is the client that allows you to play Magic online with other people. Ignore all of this, it's not important. If you've never seen Arena before, none of this is important right now. We're going to go to decks, and we're going to build a deck, and we're going to play some Magic. So, I will explain in very basic terms how the game works. So, the point of the game is to pit you and another player against one another. You both start with 20 life, and your goal is to whittle down your opponent's life to 0. Now they can do the same to you. Obviously, whoever reaches 0 first is the loser. The one with life remaining is the winner. Another potential way to win the game is to have your opponent run out of cards. Your opponent's and your deck are 60 cards, and if you or your opponent go to draw a card, don't have any cards left, you lose the game, or they lose the game. So, now we're going to go over the basics of actually playing cards, now that we've done the basics of the actual game. So, in order to play the game, you need what are called lands. Now, lands, there are 5 basic colors. They all are essentially the same thing, they just have different arts. Some lands are unique and do special things, but we're not going to focus on those. We're going to focus on basic lands. Now, lands are, like I said, used to play cards, so we're going to put some lands into this deck. And I will explain in just a moment how it works. So, we need to move on to regular cards so I can show you how cards work in this game. So, each card has a couple of different identifying things on it. It has the art, which isn't important, but looks nice. It has the name, the cost of the card, the type of the card, any effects the card will have, and its power and toughness. So first we're going to go over the name. Simple, it's just an identifying factor, that's it. Now, you can't have more than 4 cards with the same name in the deck. So I can have up to 4 copies, 4 as you can see here, copies of this card or cards with the same name. So next we have its cost, which you use lands to produce something called mana to pay the cost, which we'll get into a little bit more later. But essentially, if you have 1 land, you can tap it, which means you turn it sideways to show that it's been used that turn, to generate 1 mana of the color of the land, and then you can use that mana to pay the cost. The cost on this card being 1 white mana, or 1 plains. So, let's say I play a plains this turn, I tap it to show that I've used it, I generate 1 mana, and then I can use that mana to pay the cost of this card. Okay, now continuing on, each card has a type. There are creatures, there are creatures, sorceries, instants, enchantments, artifacts, planeswalkers, and I think that's it. I might have missed something, but that's not important at the moment. So, creatures are the basic cards you use to win the game, essentially. You use creatures to attack one another and attack other players. So, creatures all have types, bird, demon, angel, whatever. It only matters for specific card effects. It's not all that important when you're beginning the game. They will have effects, which we'll get into effects and keywords in a minute. But importantly, right now, we need to talk about power and toughness. So, each card that's a creature has a number for power and a number for toughness. So the way this works is power is how much damage is dealt to something when the card attacks. Toughness is how much damage it can withstand before it is destroyed. So if I attack with this creature, I will deal 1 damage to whatever it hits. If I am attacked and I block with this creature, it can withstand 2 damage before it's dead and goes to the graveyard, which is where you put cards that you've played that have resolved their effects or are destroyed. So, moving on from that, we'll talk a little bit about creature effects while we're still talking about creatures. So there are certain things in this game called keywords, which is a single word that describes an effect. As you can see on the top right here, flying has its effect written out. So, some of the keywords in this game are flying, first strike, protection, indestructible, hexproof, reach, etc., etc. We won't go over all of them, but I'll explain a few of them, because going over all of them would take forever. So, Flying just means that it can't be blocked except by creatures that also have flying or reach. Reach just means that it can block creatures with flying. Pretty simple. First strike means that this card would deal its damage to another creature first. Normally, cards clash and deal damage to one another at the same time. But because this card has first strike, it gets to attack, air quotes, first. So if I attack a 1-1, if I attack a 2-1, and this has first strike, this will deal its 1 damage first. So that creature, since its toughness is only 1, it can only withstand 1 damage, will be destroyed. Meanwhile, this takes no damage because it got to strike first. So let's see. Flying, first strike. Lifelink's another one. Lifelink just means that whatever damage the creature or the card deals, you gain that much life in exchange. Protection means that it can't be blocked, it can't be attacked, it can't be targeted by whatever it's got protection from. So if it says protection from black, black cards can't target it, black cards can't attack it, black cards can't do anything to it. If you block with it, that black card deals no damage to the card because it has protection from black. Let's see here. Indestructible means that the card can't be destroyed by damage from battle. Hexproof means that your opponent can't target it with anything. Flash means that you can play the card anytime you could play an instant, which means you can play it anytime. Your turn, your opponent's turn, during combat, doesn't matter. Flash means you can just play the card anytime you want. Enchant creature means that the card will equip onto the creature and give it a passive effect. For instance, this one says enchanted creature gets 1/1 and has vigilance. While we're on the topic, vigilance means that when the creature would attack, which normally when creatures attack they are tapped to show that they've been activated that turn, vigilance means that that creature won't be tapped. So it attacks, and since it's not tapped, it can still block on your opponent's turn. Creatures that are tapped can't block. So if I swing with this 1/1, it becomes tapped. Next turn, they can swing, and I won't have any blockers. But if I enchant it with this card, it gets 1/1 and has vigilance, which means it's now a 2/2. I can swing with it, attack. I can attack with it, and it won't tap, so next turn I can still block with it. So that's Vigilance, Flash, Lifelink, Indestructible, Hexproof. Let's see, let's go through some colors here. So different colors have different effects. All cards can have different effects, but mainly certain colors do certain things, which I'll get into a little bit after this. So a mainly blue keyword is Scry, which means you look at the top card of your deck, and you can put it back on top, or you can put it on the bottom. Let's see here. I think... Oh, Defender's another one. So ignore all this right here. That's not important. But the keyword Defender just means that the card can't attack. Landfall means that whenever you would play a land, it gains this effect. So, for instance, this card says whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, aka whenever you play a land, your opponent mills 3 cards. Mill is another keyword we'll talk about. Milling means that you send cards from the top of your deck to the graveyard. So, each opponent mills 3 cards means your opponent sends the top 3 cards of their deck to the graveyard. Return just means that a card returns from the field to its owner's hand, or from the graveyard to its owner's hand, or from wherever specifically to its owner's hand. Your hand being cards you draw. We'll get into that in a minute. I think that's everything for blue off the top. Black has something called Death Touch, which means that any damage it deals to another creature is enough to kill that creature. Red has Haste, which means that as soon as the creature comes in, it can attack. Normally, when creatures hit the field, they have what's called Summoning Sickness, which means they can't attack until next turn. But creatures with Haste, like this, can attack as soon as they hit the field. Oh, okay, can we get off of there? Thank you. Let's see, green. I think we've already been through most of the green keywords, except for Trample. So let's find a bigger creature that has Trample, because that's easier to explain. Also, I need to talk about Kicker. I'll talk about Kicker now. So, when you play the card, you pay its cost to play it. If you want to, you can activate this alternative cost, or this secondary cost, I should say. You pay the primary one, and then you can choose to pay an extra cost. If you pay the extra cost, it gets a secondary effect. See, then we have Trample. As soon as I find a card that has it, I will explain it to you. Pretty sure there's one around here somewhere. I'll just search. That'll be... Okay, here we go. Here's one. Trample means that any excess damage rolls over and deals damage to your opponent's life. So, if they block with a 1-1, and we attack with a 3-3, normally, they would take no damage. Their creature would be destroyed, and that excess damage just disappears. But if the creature has Trample, it rolls over, deals damage to the opponent. So if we attack with a 3-3 with Trample, they block with a 1-1, the difference is 2, they take 2 damage. Okay, I think that's pretty much all of the basic keywords I can think of off the top of my head. So let's get a little bit more into playing the game. So we'll just put a creature there right quick. Oops, wrong thing. I have to click over here. So we've talked about creatures. So next, let's talk about instants. So instants are cards that you can play at literally any time. You can play during your turn, during your opponent's turn. You can play during combat. They can just be played at any time. So that's an instant. We're just going to put it there. It doesn't matter that we don't have enough. Next, we'll talk about sorceries, if I can find one. Just a normal sorcery. A lot of my white stuff is instants. So sorceries are cards that you can play on your turn, and that is it. You can only play it on your turn. You can't play it during combat. You can't play it during your opponent's turn. So sorceries come into the game. Same as instants. You play them. Their effect resolves. They go to the graveyard. Pay the cost. Play the card. Effect. Graveyard. Simple. Clean. Is the way you're making me feel tonight. Anyway, so Swallow Whole is a sorcery. We've got an instant there. Next, we're going to talk about an enchantment. Actually, yeah, we'll talk about an enchantment. So, enchantments are cards that you pay the cost, they come onto the field, they stay on the field, and they activate their effect. There's also enchantment aura, which just means that instead of it coming onto the field and staying on the field, it comes onto the field and attaches to a creature. And then it gives that specific creature its bonus. Along with this, we also have artifacts and equipment. Artifacts are cards that you pay their cost, they come in, like enchantments, they have a passive ability. Equipments, on the other hand, artifact equipments, are just like enchantment auras. They come in, you pay their cost, they come in, they equip to a creature, and their effect resolves, and they stay on the field. So, artifacts and enchantments both come into the field, stay on the field, give passive effects. Artifact equipments and enchantment auras come onto the field, equip onto a creature, and give that creature their specific effect. Okay, so I think that's everything, isn't it? Besides maybe Plansewalkers. Oops. Gosh damn it. Alright, so Plansewalkers are a unique card. So not every deck has a Planeswalker in it. Planeswalkers are very unique, let's say. They're there to fit certain niches. So Teferi's a good Planeswalker to look at, so we'll look at him. So a Planeswalker is kind of like a creature. You pay its cost, it has a type, it comes onto the field, and it stays there. Unlike a creature, Planeswalkers can't attack. They only have one number, which is essentially toughness. If they're attacked, they take damage, the number lowers. When the number hits 0, they leave the field and go to the graveyard. Now, what's all this biz down here? Effects with numbers next to them? I know, crazy, right? So first off, they'll have a passive effect sometimes. You may activate loyal abilities to Teferi Master of Time, this being that card, on any player's turn anytime you can cast an instant. These are loyalty abilities. And since they are, and this is this card, you can play these at any time you can cast an instant, which is essentially any time at all. So, what are these effects? What are the numbers? What do they do? So, you start with loyalty. This card specifically, a loyalty of 3. When it hits 0, this card leaves the field. We've already discussed that. But how do we make this number higher? We don't want this card to just come in, get attacked once, and leave the field. So, we have these effects that either plus or minus the number by certain amounts. So let's say we play this card, and we want it to stick around for a lot longer than it's, intended to. So we play the +1 ability, which lets us draw a card, then discard a card. And then this number will go up by 1. Now, say we want to play a really powerful ability of this card. So we -3 this number, and a target creature you don't control phases out, which means it leaves the field until the end of the turn and then comes back. Sounds a little weird, but it's used for some good effects. So let's say we want to use a really powerful ability. We've been playing this first ability over and over again, and now we have 10 loyalty on this guy. So we want to play his big bad ability, which gives us 2 extra turns. We play our turn, it ends, we play our turn again, it ends, we play our turn again. We get 3 turns in a row. Crazy powerful, gives you lots of time to do stuff, costs 10 loyalty. So you're going to need to hit that +1 over and over again until this number reaches 10. So, like I said, that's Planeswalkers. We're not actually going to build a competent deck out of this, but I'm just using this as a, thing to list all the cards. So that's Planeswalkers. Now, there are a few unique cards which I'll go through. We'll start with Sagas. So Sagas are pretty simple to understand. They look a little complicated at first. They're enchantments, so you pay the cost, they come onto the field, they stick around, and they give a passive effect. So the first turn that this card is on the field, you get its first effect. The second turn, you get its second effect. The third turn, you get its third effect, and after that, on the fourth turn, you sacrifice it. You get rid of it. You send it to the graveyard. So Sagas just have a different effect every turn that they're on the field. So that's how Sagas work. Now, adventure cards are a little bit more complicated. This card looks really complicated to the untrained eye, I know, but give me a second. The way this works is you pay its cost, and you can choose to either have it come in as a creature and stay on the field, deal damage and all that, or you can have it become an instant, or a sorcery, or whatever it says on its card type. So you can either pay the cost to make it a creature, or pay the cost to make it an instant or sorcery or whatever. And then if you do this first, when you do this, the card becomes exiled, which means it's removed from the game, and then you can play it as a creature later. It's a little complicated to understand at first, I get that. They're just pretty good cards generally. They're very versatile. You can either have a creature, or a sorcery, or an instant. Alright, so now that we've discussed different card types, all of the basic card types, something important you need to know is that every card that is not a land is considered a spell. So, creatures, spells. Instants, sorceries, spells. Artifacts, equipment, enchantments, spells. Planeswalkers, spells. So, the only thing that is not considered a spell is a land. Okay, so right quick, we're going to look at a real deck. Excuse the name. But we're going to look at a real deck, and we're going to see maybe how it works a little bit. So we've discussed cards, we've discussed how they work, the basic types. We'll go over each one of these cards a little bit, and then I'll explain how turns work, and we'll play a couple of games, and we'll see how things work. So, Fanatical Firebrand is the name of this card. It costs 1 to play. It has haste, which means it can attack on the first turn. You can tap it and get rid of it, send it to the graveyard, sacrifice it, to deal 1 damage to any target. It's a 1/1. It's a pretty good card. It's really good for bum rushing your opponent on turn 1 and dealing damage to get rid of little board threats. Board threats being creatures on the field that are a threat to you. We've got 4 shocks. Shocks being cards that cost 1 and deal 2 damage at instant speed, which means you can play it anytime. We've got 4 Soulscar Mages, which is a 1/2 that costs 1, has a keyword called Prowess, which means during your turn, if you play an instant or sorcery, it gains 1/1 until end of turn. And it has an ability that says if you would deal damage, you put that many -1/1 counters on a creature instead, which is important for getting around things that have indestructible, and just generally lowering things' attack power, that is. We have a Braid, which is a versatile card. It's cost 2, and it can deal 3 damage or destroy an artifact. We've got Robber of the Rich, which has reach and haste. It means it can block flying, and it can attack on its first turn. Whenever it attacks, you exile the top card of your opponent's deck, and then you have the ability to cast that card. We've got Runaway Steamkin, which is a 2-drop 1/1. Every time you play a red spell, which again, remember, is any card other than a land, it gets a 1/1 counter on it. If it has 3 1/1 counters on it, you can remove those and then add 3 mana. Bone Crusher Giant is an adventure card. It gives us the opportunity to either play a big creature, a 4/3, and whenever that 4/3 becomes targeted by an opponent's spell, it deals 2 damage to them. Or we can just play it as shock, essentially. It deals 2 damage to anything, and it can't be prevented that turn. So they can't stop the damage. We have Goblin Chain Whirler, a 3/3 that costs 3. It has first strike, which means it deals its damage first. And when it enters, it deals 1 damage to each opponent and each creature and planeswalker they control. It's just a little bit of control, or not control, a little bit of threat assessment, essentially. So any opponent that likes to spam out low drop creatures that have low power and toughness, this is an answer to that. We have 4 Phoenix of Ash, which is a 3-drop 2/2. It has flying, which means it can go over blockers that don't have flying or reach. It has haste, it can attack turn 1. You can pay a cost to give it +2/0 until the end of turn, so it becomes a 4/2. And if it's in your graveyard, you can exile other cards and it escapes. Escape being a keyword, which means you pay the cost, you banish some cards from your graveyard, you exile them, and it comes back onto the battlefield. It gets resurrected, essentially. And it comes back with 1/1 counters on it. Sometimes it can be 3 1/1 counters, 1 1/1 counter, just depends on the card. Skewer the Critics is a 3-drop that deals 3 damage, and it has the keyword Spectacle. Spectacle means that if our opponent takes damage, we can pay that cost instead of the card's cost. So if they've taken damage this turn, instead of paying 3, we can pay its Spectacle cost, which is 1, and then deal 3 damage to anything. And then lastly, we've got a Planeswalker, Tibalt Rakish Instigator, or Rakish Instigator. He just has a passive effect that says your opponent can't gain life. He starts at 5 loyalty, and for -2, you can create a 1/1 devil that when it dies, deals 1 damage to any target. We also have 20 mountains. You're generally going to need anywhere between 23 and 27 lands in a deck, but with red and a deck like this, which is called aggro, which means aggressive, very fast, you generally don't need as many lands. So we have 20. So now I'm going to go over what the basic colors do, basically what they do, and then we'll play a few games and you'll see how turn order works. So white, the color white is generally about protection and equipments and buffing things like knights, which is a creature type. Blue generally draws cards, has cards with flying, creatures with flying, and generally has counter spells, which essentially when you play a spell, if your opponent plays a counter spell, it stops your spell from activating. So hence the name Counterspell. They're very powerful cards, and blue has an abundance of them. Black has creatures that deal with death effects, killing other creatures, sacrificing themselves for good effects, sending cards to the graveyard, bringing cards from the graveyard back to the battlefield or your hand. Red deals with damage and haste. You bolt, which means you deal damage, to your opponent's cards, their creatures. Meanwhile, your low-cost haste creatures can go for damage, go for face, keep swinging every single turn. Green is about land ramp and big creatures, and enchantments that give big buffs to creatures. Land ramp means that you play a lot of lands really quickly, that way you can get out big creatures really quickly. So a card that might cost 7, you could potentially get out on turn 4. How, you may ask? You could play 1 land a turn? Well, with land ramp, you can play cards that get you more lands each turn. Alright, so now that we've gone over those basics, we're going to play a game, or maybe 2, probably 3. We'll play 3 games. I'll explain how things work the first game, and then we'll go on, play another one where I explain a little bit less, and then we'll play a real game where I go full speed. And we'll be playing red, so it'll be pretty fast. You'll get to see just how fast a game can actually be, unless we run into something like blue with counter spells, but that's another story. So essentially, we'll play the game, we'll see how the flow goes, and you'll get a little bit better understanding of how the game works. And we'll also wait 30 seconds on an opponent to be found. Probably the worst part of playing Magic Online is just waiting for the opponent. But we've got one, so no big deal. Alright, so the very first thing that happens in Magic is you determine who goes first. Then that's followed by both players drawing 7 cards, which is your hand. You keep these cards hidden from your opponent. Your opponent can't see them. They're your cards. You get to play them. So after you draw your opening hand, you can choose to either keep them or mulligan, which means you put your hand back into the deck, you shuffle, and draw 7 new cards. We're going to mulligan just to show you what happens. It's a bad hand, so we're going to mulligan one more time. Okay, so now that we have a better hand, we're going to keep it. Now you might notice that number went down from 7 to 6 to 5. Every time you mulligan, you have to return every time you mulligan, when you decide to keep your hand, you have to return 1 card from your hand to the bottom of the deck for each time you mulligan. So, we've mulliganed twice, we have to return 2 cards to the bottom of the deck from our hand. We're going to return 2 of these, and then we're going to keep our hand. So our opponent will go first. They'll go to their main phase, they'll be able to play a land, play a creature, play an instant, play a sorcery, enchantment, artifact, etc. They'll move to combat. They can't attack the first turn, though. They'll move to main phase 2, which is where they can do things again if they wish, if they have the land. And then they'll end their turn. So, we're going to play a land. We're going to tap that land, turn it sideways to show that we've activated it. It will give us 1 mana that is red, and we can use it to play a creature or any kind of spell. So, we've got 2 choices here. We're going to go with this one. I know it's my turn. Calm down. We're going to play a 1-drop card. It's a 1 cost, 1/2 with some good effects. Now, we'll get more into what the effects do next game, but mainly here we're going to be worrying about the cost and the power and toughness of the card. So, our opponent has played another creature and an artifact, which means it has a passive effect, and their creature also has a passive effect. Both of them do. So, we're going to play a land. We're going to play another creature. And since our creature has 2 toughness, and nothing they have has 2 power, they don't have anything strong enough to kill it, so we're going to go ahead and attack. They're going to block. They can block with multiple creatures on one. Both of these have enough power combined to deal enough damage to kill our creature. So this will die in the process because it only has 1 toughness. But this will survive because it has 2. Our creature dies. Oh, theirs didn't die. Whoops, I guess we attacked in the wrong order. It's very important to attack in the right order, otherwise your creature will collapse. And that's not what we really want. They're good gaming us already. That's a little ambitious. They probably assume we're either new to the game or we don't know what we're doing. Of course, we're going slow to explain this, to let you see how the game works. We're going to not block because our creature will be destroyed. Oh good, we've drawn into a 3rd land. We're going to play it. We're going to play a creature. Cast a spell, it deals damage. It deals 2 damage and can't be prevented. All of their creatures are the same, so we're going to go ahead and just pick a random one. And we're going to ping it, or bolt it, or, deal 2 damage to it. They're going to activate their passive effect, which gets rid of one of their own cards for another card. This is a big chain of stuff, I know, but like I said, we're going to get more into effects next game. And we'll just see how the turns go this time. So we're not going to attack. Well, we will attack. We'll attack with this one because it's a 3/3. Even if they block, it's still going to destroy them. Their card's effect will activate, dealing damage, but that's not that big of a deal right now. They choose not to block, we go through and deal 3 damage. And then we end. Ooh, they're going to gain control of one of our creatures with a card. They're going to swing, do a lot of damage to us, unfortunately. Sacrifice their own creature, which was ours. Create some tokens, which are temporary cards. We've drawn another land, which you always want to play your lands. You can play one per turn, you always want to play them. Pretty much always. That way you'll have more, essentially, ammo to fire out of your cannon, if you will. We're going to tap some lands, gain that mana. MTG Arena does this for us automatically, so we don't have to. But in a real game, you would do it yourself. Turn them sideways, tap them, gain the mana, play the cards. So we're going to play this card. This is a free drop. Deal a damage to them, and pass turn. Now, as sad as it is, we're probably not going to win this game. Our opponent has lots of food tokens. They've got a passive effect. Their creatures deal damage when they die. But winning isn't everything, and we're not really concerned with that at the moment. This is just a learning experience. Oftentimes, you learn more from defeat than you do from winning anyway, so... No blocks, because even if we block, it would destroy us. Well, we've drawn a damage spell, but it's a little bit too late now. So we're going to go ahead and play this. Deal some damage to this creature. And we're going to go ahead and attack, because their creature is tapped. Oh, I didn't mean to do that. Anyway, we're going to go ahead and attack, since their creature is tapped. They can't block it. It seems they've spawned a blocker, unfortunately. They're going to block ours. They're 1-1. Ours was 1-1, so they both die. And this turn, if they have an effect in hand that deals damage, they'll probably lose. Well, they didn't, so we last another turn. We don't have anything that can win us the game at this point. We're dead next turn anyway, so we're going to good game, which, you know, is just a common thing that players say to one another at the end of the game. You know, you tell your opponent good game, you know, just as a sort of courtesy, and we're going to concede. Alright, so now that you've seen basic turn structure and how cards work, we're going to get a little bit more into the exact effects of cards. Look at that, we've received a reward. Very nice. Anyway, we're going to get a little bit more into the exact effects of cards. Yep, it sure is loading. Jeez, it's taking a while to reach some opponents. But we hit someone, so let's go ahead and play the game. Alright, so our opening hand is pretty decent. We've got some field, some board presence, creatures that can do things. We've got some creatures that have damage spell effects. We've got a damage spell. We've got 2 land, which is enough to play this hand. Both of these cost 1. This costs 2 for the effect, 3 for the creature, and this can potentially cost 1, so we're going to keep our hand. Our opponent is deciding what to keep, what to play. Very nice sleeves. Soul Ring, a classic card for Commander, which is another format. What we're playing is just casual, 60-card decks, 4 copies of each card. It's the basic Magic experience. There are plenty of other formats, so you're never really bored when it comes to playing Magic. There are plenty of different ways to play it. Unlike, say, Yu-Gi-Oh! Or Pokemon, for example, that may have a standard and like a modern format, Magic has a ton of different official formats. Well, I know I just said you're never bored playing Magic, but I'm getting there with this opponent. Let's give him the good old hello. Maybe that'll snap him out of his stupor. Maybe not. Let's try one more hello. Well, the timer started because he's been absent, as far. Great. Well, we're actually going to concede. We're going to play against another player because we'll gain nothing from just beating someone who's not there. You know, there's no point in trying to teach you through, you know, cheap tricks, essentially. So we're going to go ahead and find another opponent right quick. And when we do, hopefully we'll get a real game this time. Also, hopefully it doesn't take another minute to find an opponent. But, you know, it's... What time even is it? It's 4:30. 4:30 on a Wednesday, so, you know. Pretty common that, you know, it's going pretty slow right now. Not everyone's just jumping on to play Magic at 4:30 on a Wednesday, so... Now, if it was, say, 5:30 on a Friday, we might see an influx of people, but... There we go. Now, as fun as it may seem at first to hit an opponent with just not wanting to do anything, giving you the opportunity to pretty much play whatever you want, it's really not as fun as you'd think. Okay, so we've got 2 lands, which is the perfect amount. We'll draw into a third one potentially on turn 2 or 3, maybe even turn 1. We've got a 1-drop creature, we've got plenty of 2-drops that have good effects, and we've got 2 Goblin Chain Whirlers, 3-drops that can deal damage when they come in. So we're going to go ahead and keep. It looks like our opponent's going first. Either that or they're still deciding what to keep or mulligan. Hopefully they're not another dead player. If so, we'll just give them the blow to see for sure. Okay. Some very nice sleeves. I think this is a Draco Lich from Dungeons & Dragons. Yeah, if you're interested in Dungeons & Dragons, actually, Magic just had a crossover set. A full set of like 200 and some cards that are all creatures and spells and things from D&D. If you're not a fan of D&D, still really fun to play. Alright, it seems they mulliganed a couple times. Alright, enough of the D&D talk. Looks like the game's about to begin. Looks like we're going first, so we'll play a land, as you do pretty much every turn, and we'll play our 1-drop creature. Now, he has Prowess, which means every time we play an instant or sorcery spell, it gets 1/1 until end of turn. And if we deal damage to something that's non-combat damage, aka a spell effect, it actually loses 1 and 1. Loses 1 toughness, loses 1 power, instead of just taking damage. So we'll play a land, and we'll go ahead and play Runaway Steam King. Now, we definitely want to play this first, because any red spell we cast afterwards will allow it to grow in strength. So we're going to go ahead and move to combat, with our 1 open boy, and we're going to go ahead and move to the next turn. He's played 2 mountains. Nice art, but that doesn't really matter. Ooh, he's played a card and countered it himself so he could get an effect trigger. So, oh, he's given up. That's not good. First we get a guy who doesn't want to play, then we get a guy who wants to give up. Alright, we'll play a bot match, just to show you. Bots don't give up. Bots don't sit around and do it. So we'll play a bot match against the AI, and hopefully we'll be able to actually play the game in these rules. Alright, so we've gotten a decent opener. We've gotten 3 lands, which potentially we really only want to open with 2 so we can draw into 1 and have more things to actually play. We've got a 1-drop creature, 1-drop spell that deals damage, a 3-drop creature, and another 3-drop creature. So it's not the best hand. I think we're going to mulligan, which means we reset. Ooh, even worse hand. We'll mulligan one more time. That's better. We'll keep this hand. So we'll put one land on the bottom of the deck.
Play.
Shut up, Sparky. We'll get there. And then we'll go ahead and put a Fanatical Firebrand on the bottom of the deck. Alright, so it's our turn. We play a land for turn. We play our 1-drop. It has haste, so we're going to go ahead and swing. We swing, and then we move turn. In turn. They're going to play a Defender, which means it can't attack, but it does have 0-4, so it's going to be a tough wall to get over without a damage spell. We're going to play a Mountain, and we're going to play our boy, Robert the Rich. Robert the Rich has 3 haste, he can block things with flying, and he can attack on turn 1. And whenever he attacks, I believe it's if he deals damage? No, it's whenever he attacks, if they have more cards in hand, we get to exile the top card of their deck, and then potentially play it if we have enough mana. Which we unfortunately don't have any mana left over this turn, but we're going to go ahead and swing so we can just block, exile the card. So exile meaning remove from the game. So they no longer have access. They're going to play vanilla effect 1/3 for 2. But we have some damage spells in hand, so we're going to start killing their creatures. We're going to go ahead and play Abrade, which either deals 3 damage to a creature or destroys an artifact. Pretty versatile card, pretty good. It's at instant speed, so we can play it anytime we want, but we're going to go ahead and play it now. We're going to deal 3 damage to this, it's going to destroy it, then all they have left is a 0/4, which means they can't deal damage to us. So we're going to attack with both our creatures. They'll probably block the bigger one, then our 1 will go through and hit them because they have nothing to block with. We've exiled another card, we've destroyed their creature, and we've dealt 1 damage to them. They've water knotted, which means our creature won't untap, unfortunately. We're going to play Runaway Steamkin, so we can start building up power on this boy. Every red spell gives him 1/1. Then we're going to go ahead and pass, because attacking won't do anything. Sure, our creature won't be destroyed, but we can't get any damage through, so there's no point. Alright, they're going to play a 3-drop 0/5, which is going to be even tougher to get over. We've got another Fanatical Firebrand, and a Bone Crusher Giant, and a Shock. So, what we'll do is we'll go ahead and play Fanatical Firebrand. This will trigger Runaway Steamkin. Now we have 2 1/1s with haste that can potentially deal 1 damage. We can sacrifice them with their own effect to deal 1 damage to any target. So our opponent, our opponent's creatures, whatever. So we're going to go ahead and do that. We're going to play Shock, deal 2 damage to Wall of Ruins, getting a trigger on Runaway Steamkin. Then we're going to sacrifice both of these, dealing 1 damage each time to Wall of Ruins, which is just enough to kill them. Now we've got to deal with that 0/5. So we won't attack, because nothing will happen. They play Accredited, a 4-drop 3/3 that lets them scry twice. So they look at the top card 2 times, and then they decide if they want to put it back on the top or the bottom of their deck. We only have 2 mana available, 2 lands, tactical as you see, and we'll go ahead and play... Well, no, we won't play it yet. We'll go ahead and attack first. We'll attack with Runaway Steamkin. He'll block with his 0/5 because he doesn't want to take that damage. It'll deal 3 damage to this, and then we'll be able to deal another 2, killing this creature. We'll attack. Oh, they blocked with their 3/3 action. which was kind of a foolish mistake, but, you know, people make mistakes. Alright, the enchantment there's 0-5 and plus 1-1. So now it has 1, it can swing. Kind of a mistake, but, you know, people make mistakes. We'll go ahead and play Soulscar Mage, which will allow us to start dwindling our opponent's power and toughness to nothing. Because every time we would deal damage, instead, we give it a -1/-1 counter. Also, Soulscar Mage has Prowess, which means that anytime we play a spell, or anytime we play an instant or sorcery spell, it'll actually buff him by 1. So we're going to go ahead. We're going to do 2 damage to this, which will give it -1/-1 damage. It's now a -1/4. Negative power doesn't matter. It's just always considered 0. But for technical reasons, it will specifically say -1. Just know that it's actually 0. Any negative number is considered 0. We'll go ahead and attack with our Soulscar Mage. Plus the damage. The most damage they can do in a turn is 2 at the moment, so we're not really worried about blocking. With an aggro deck, a red deck, an aggressive deck, you really want to go fast. So you want to try and deal as much damage as possible, as quickly as possible. Now I'm going to go ahead and use another Bone Crusher Giant spell effect, and we're going to get rid of Water Consume. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to pass, because our attack won't go through. I could win words. So for every creature with flying they have, it costs 1 less. Lets them draw 2 cards. Alright. We've got Fanatical Firebrand in hand, which will allow us to deal 1 more damage, or Phoenix of Ash, which has flying. Now they can't block any creatures with flying, because they don't have a creature with flying, or a creature with reach. So we're going to go ahead, and we're going to attack with Phoenix of Ash. They can't block it, we'll go over and deal 2 damage. Water Knot, just like last time. It won't untap now, unless we destroy this enchantment, which unfortunately we don't have any way to destroy enchantments in this game. Alright, so now we're going to bring that boy down to 0. We're going to play a Fanatical Firebrand. We're going to swing with Soulscar Mage, which hopefully they'll block, or they would be a fool not to block. They blocked. So now what we're going to do is we're going to actually sacrifice this to deal 1 damage to them. Because if we do that, it'll lower the cost of Skewer the Crits, which will allow us during our second main phase, which is after combat, to use it to kill the turtle. Deals 3 damage, its toughness is brought to 0, and we've killed their turtle. They're at 12 life, we're at 14, we have a board, they don't. We're going to go ahead and play this mountain, which will allow us to play our Bone Crusher Giant as a creature, who's a pretty good card. Then we'll attack with Soulscar Mage, and we'll pass turn. We're going to play Cloud Conceer, 2/1 for 3 that just draws them a card. It also has flying, so they can swing right over our stuff since we don't have anything that can actually stop it. Or they could if we hadn't just drawn this shock. Instead, we're going to go ahead and shock that for 2 damage. And then we still have enough mana left to play Bone Crusher Giant as a creature. Now we move on to attackers. We can seal with Bone Crusher Giant and Soulscar Mage. Even if they were to block or do something to destroy this, it's still going to cost them 2 life. Because Bone Crusher Giant's effect says that whenever it's targeted by a spell, it deals 2 damage to that spell's controller. So if our opponent were to do something to deal 3 damage to it and kill it, it would still deal 2 damage to it. Alright, they've got another 0-5. We're going to have to find a way to get over that. So, let's place the land, and we'll go ahead and swing with both of our trolls and Soulscar Mage, and that should be enough to kill them. They'll be able to block one of the creatures. They might block both, we'll find out. But if they only block one of the creatures, we'll deal 4 from a Bone Crusher Giant and 1 from a Soulscar Mage. So let's see what happens. I'm sorry, I've just made a dumb mistake. You can't block multiple creatures with him. My bad. I was thinking they had another creature for some reason. If he had 2 creatures, he could block 1 creature with both of them, but you can't block multiple creatures with 1 creature unless the card specifically states you can. So what's going to happen is he's going to block 1 of the creatures. We're going to get 4 and 1 damage through for a total of 5, and we're going to kill him.
Take your time.
And that's the game.
Want to play again?
Alright, so next we're going to play a bot match, and this time I'm just going to play as if I would play normally without explaining hardly anything. I'm just going to dictate the plays, and then we're going to see what happens. With a deck like this, a red aggro deck, it's fairly easy to overwhelm your opponent at the beginning. Our opponent is a beginner, technically, so we're going to go ahead and overwhelm them as quickly as possible. So we're going to play Fanatic Firebrand. We're going to get 1 into the case, and we're going to pass turn. We're going to play a land. We're going to play Soulscar Mage and shock that snap. We're going to go ahead and swing for another 1. Attacks this turn. Oh, the passive plan is lame. His effect will still go off, so that's good. Another land, that's good. We're going to waste this Abrade to get rid of any field presence he has. And we're going to swing all out with it. Perfect. Even though I could have waited to use this to do a potential threats, I really want to get that solution up there. I'm gonna swing. I'd say potentially 2 turns, the enemy is done. Oh, but they have Sarah. I've got no way to deal with that, really. Actually, I do have a way to deal with that. There we go. With that, our opponent has lost the game.
Congratulations, you've done it.
So, not only have you seen how a real game goes, well, potentially a real game, this was fairly easy because the opponent is the AI, but you've seen how a real game works without much instruction. You've seen how quickly a red aggro deck can just bully its way through your opponent. So, I guess we'll go ahead and play a couple other strategies, just so you can see how certain things work. So, we'll go ahead and play a mixed color strategy. We'll go ahead and play the deck called Life Skills. Now, Life Skills is a basic deck that comes with MTG Arena. If you're interested in playing Magic online, MTG Arena is an excellent place. You'll get access to most of these decks right here. These 3 are custom decks. This is a custom deck, which I need to favorite right quick so I don't forget. I'll do that later. But anyway, whoops, I guess I'll go ahead and favorite it now. Any of the decks that are not favorited, all of these are decks that you can earn, unlock, and gain through playing the game. It's pretty good. Pretty good way to actually gain experience playing Magic if you're not too keen on actually talking to people or playing with other people. If you don't have a card shop, it's just very handy. It's on mobile, it's on PC, it's on Mac. I will leave a link to MTG Arena on all 3 platforms for you. But let's go ahead and play a game with another deck, and we'll see exactly how some other strategies work. Good old Sparky. Alright, so we're going to Mulligan because this isn't a great opening hand. That's much better. So,
Yo, now let's play.
the aim of black and white is to gain as much life as possible and get abilities that activate either off of gaining life or activate abilities that cost you life but do positive effects. So we're going to attempt to gain as much life as possible and gain effects off of gaining life. Okay. We're going to play Plan, play Griffinary, which is a good card. Griffinary says that anytime we would gain 3 or more life each turn, we create a 2/2 white griffin with flying. We're not going to attack because this field is a little scary right now. Probably only going to be scarier since we're playing black. But Anointed Chorister, this card has a lifelink, and if you pay its cost, it can get an extra 3/3 each turn. Not a great card, but it's one that's in the deck, so we're going to play. We're going to play Flames, and we're going to play Silver Smoke. Now, Silver Smoke Rule is an interesting card because it's a 3/1 that we can block with, and if we've gained 3 life or more each turn, we can return it from the graveyard to the battlefield. Pretty cool. We're going to go ahead and attack to get a little bit of life. Oops, forgot they had a creature untapped. My bad. Don't follow my example, kids. But anyway, we're just playing with the basic black-white lifelink deck. So, you know, we could win, we could lose, doesn't matter. We're going to go ahead and block Typhoid Rats, actually, with a Death Touch. Normally, you'd want to block the bigger creature, but Death Touch is a little scarier, because no matter how big a creature we get out, we're, you know, liable to lose it. So we're going to play a land that gains us a life, and we're going to play Tavern Swimmer. Now, Tavern Swimmer is not a great card, but it can potentially gain us up to 6 life each turn, and that can trigger this at least once each turn. So we're going to go ahead and not block, because we're going to keep up field. This game's looking like it could be over soon. But I'm really only here to show you how different strategies work, so even if we lose, as long as we played the strategy, it doesn't matter. So we're going to go ahead and play Revitalize, which says gain 3 life and draw a card. That'll get us a trigger off Griffinary, which will give us a Griffin at the end of the turn, and we'll draw something that could be potentially useful. It wasn't, but we'll go ahead and pop down another Tavern Swindler, so we have potentially a blocker or potentially a life gain card. And we're going to go ahead and play Tavern Swindler's effect. Flip a coin. If it's heads, we gain life. You pay 3 life to activate it. You flip a coin. If heads, you gain 6 life. If tails, you gain nothing. So we're using it to get that trigger, getting the Silver Smoke Rule trigger back to get it back on the field. They've activated a card that destroys our Silver Smoke Rule, though. So now we've got some blockers that we're going to block with. We're going to go ahead and get rid of this by blocking with both of our creatures. Okay, so we've gotten a card with Death Touch in our hand, or Lifelink potentially. So we're going to go ahead and pop it down, and we're going to give it Death Touch. That way anything we block, it will kill instantly. We're also going to activate Tavern Swimmer's ability to hopefully get another Griffin. Very nice. And we're going to not attack, so we have to block it. And Silver Smoke Bull will come back again, because we've gained the life. So I'm actually going to activate its ability, which lets us pay the cost, sacrifice it, and draw a card. That way we can sacrifice and draw a card, bring it back with life gain effects, keep doing this over and over again. I've got a Revitalize in hand, but I'm going to wait till my turn to play it. Okay, we're going to Boot Nipper on this to kill it instantly. We're going to block that scoundrel with one of our Griffins, which will get rid of his entire field. And we'll still have to. Since we have Revitalize in hand, and we can only hit this once per turn, we have no need to actually activate Tavern Swindler. We're going to play Revitalize. Draw a card, gain this. Oh, we actually drew into a copy of the card we had in our hand. We're going to play Resolute Rider, which, right quick, I guess I should explain, this card has an interesting cost mechanic. So, these that have the 2 colors with a split down the middle means you can pay either white or black mana. So, each land produces its own type of mana. Plains produce white, swamps produce black, and most cards will cost 1 color. Like Tavern Swindler costs 1 black and 1 anything, 1 colorless.
Keep going.
So
You can
this
do
boy can be either black or white 4 times. So say we only had 4 plains and no swamps. Well, we could play him anyway because he's either or. You don't have to have 4 blacks or 4 whites. It can be 2 whites and 2 blacks. It's a little complicated sounding, but it's not that bad. Alright, so we're going to move the combat. We'll be able to swing with 2 of our creatures and keep a blocker on the field. And we'll get those triggers and get our creatures back. Then we'll pass. He's got a Malakir Coldblade, which gives everything else 1/1 when it dies. Or gives it 1/1 when it dies. But we're not worried about that. We're already pretty far in at this point. So, Resolute Rider has a neat set of effects. You can either give him lifelink, or you can give him indestructible until the end of the turn. So we're actually going to activate his effect to give him lifelink. So we'll gain 4 life. We'll get a trigger on that, and we get a trigger on Silver Smoke Ghoul, but he's not in the graveyard anyway, so it doesn't matter. So we're going to go ahead and swing all out pretty much. He's going to block with Malakir Coldblade, so he won't take the most damage, but we'll still gain it. He's actually killed our creature, which is unfortunate, but we've gained the life, which means we get another Griffin, so it doesn't matter. Also, our Griffins have flying, can deal 6, we've almost got him. Alright, we're going to go ahead and block one of the Griffins on the bat, so we don't take any damage. Actually, no, we'll not block anything. It doesn't matter at this point. Something important that a lot of beginners don't realize about the game is that your life total is also a resource. So, in not blocking him, he's leaving himself open for us to attack and kill him this turn instead of having to wait one more turn. So we're going to not block, he'll attack, he'll have no blockers, and we'll be able to attack him directly for the win. Also, we're going to play Light of Hope, which gives us 1 of 3 effects. We can either gain 4 life, destroy an enchantment, or put a 1/1 counter on a creature. We're going to go ahead and gain 4 life, get the Griffin's Airy, trigger again. We're going to sacrifice Silver Smoke Ghoul to draw a card. We're going to play that land, gain a life, and then we're going to swing, and no matter what, he won't be able to stop us. And if he was able to stop us, it wouldn't matter, because we're going to gain another Griffin, we're going to get Silver Smoke Ghoul back again.
You got me.
Doesn't matter. So, that's potentially how a black-white deck can work. There are lots of different strategies, but this is just the basic one the game gives you. So, we'll go ahead and play with one more deck. We'll go ahead and play with something a little unconventional for beginners. We'll go ahead and play black-blue. Blue being counterspells and flying, black being, death and destruction. Also, this is going to introduce a mechanic, which I find really interesting, called Mutate. It's kind of a newer mechanic, came out in a set called Ikoria, which was, I think, about a year ago now. So it's a pretty recent thing. So we're going to go ahead and mulligan out this hand. Much better. We got Mysterious Egg, which is a pretty good card. We're going to keep, and we're going to get rid of one of these Dismal Backwaters. Because these are unique lands that when they come in tapped, so we can't play them turn 1 to gain mana. So we're going to go ahead and play a regular land. This is a colorless cost, so we can play it. And what it says is whenever this creature mutates, which we'll get to mutate in a minute, you put a 1/1 counter. So mutate means that you play a card over or under a card that's already on the field. So essentially, the card gains the card that's mutating onto its effect and its attack or its power and toughness. So if I mutate this over this card, it'll be a 7/7 with the effect of Mysterious Egg. If I mutate under, it'll be a 0/2 with the effect of Archipelagor and Mysterious Egg. It's a little confusing until you actually play it, but, it's a powerful mechanic that's worth understanding. I know that there's sort of a wall when it comes to Magic, sort of a big hurdle to actually understand what most things do, but it's definitely worth gaining the knowledge to jump the hurdle. It's definitely worth it. It's fun, it's great to just triumph over your opponents. We're going to go ahead and kill that creature right there, because it's a threat, a 4/2 with trample, we don't want that. And we're going to move the combat and swing with Pollywog Symbiote. It was a 1/3. He's not going to block because they want to keep their cards here, because these cards add mana from tapping them. So instead of attacking, they can tap and add mana to their mana total. That's not good. They're getting a lot of powerful stuff really quickly. But that's what green does, so that's to be expected. So we're going to resolve. We're going to block one of those so it doesn't go through. And we're going to take some damage. 1 point to be exact. Alright, we've drawn Unexpected Fangs, which is a useful card. We're going to save... No, we're not going to save it. We're going to actually go ahead and cast it on Tolarian Symbiote. That way it can survive an attack from Battle Attack Hunters. And we're going to go ahead and swing. Now, normally these creatures wouldn't destroy one another, but if he blocks, I'll be able to play Rookie Mistake. Well, no, I guess we shouldn't do that. We should wait to block his attack. So we'll go ahead and play. That's unfortunate. He's going to kill our Polywater Symbiote unless we do something. We get 2 effects off of the 1 card, lower their power, and increase our toughness. Right. Unfortunately, we didn't draw any more mana, or any more lands, so we're going to go ahead and play Mysterious Egg, and we're going to pass turn. We got a scary field out there. Even scarier field now. That card allows them to draw cards during their upkeep for every creature, it allows them to draw cards during their upkeep, 1 card if they have a creature with 4 power or more, which they do in spades at the moment. So we're going to go ahead and pass turn. We don't kill any of our creatures anyway. At least this gives us a little bit of a chance. We drew into another land, but unfortunately it's a tap land, so it comes in tap. We're going to go ahead and not attack. We've got to get another land next turn to have any sort of a chance. Really in trouble now. We're going to block both of those. Well, actually, we're going to block this to kill it. And then we're going to go ahead and just pass. Next turn, we're dead. We've got to do something quickly. Alright, we drew into a land, which means we can play Chittering Harvester. Mutate it onto one of the eggs. So, as you'll see here in a second, the egg will become combined with the Chittering Harvester, gaining its effect and its toughness. We're going to discard the Swamp. Doesn't matter. We can play it over, so it's a 4/6, or under, so it's a 0/2. Obviously, we want a 4/6, so we're going to play it. Plus, it gets a 1/1 counter because it mutated, and they have to sacrifice a creature. So now, we're not going to attack because we need to block with everything we have, or we're going to die. Alright, we're going to block. That has Trample, so we're probably better to block this. We're going to go ahead and block that, and we're going to block that. And they're going to get a little bit of damage on us, but not much. We drew into a land, but it's not enough because it's a tap land. We're definitely going to get rid of that in hopes of drawing an answer next turn. And depending on what they play, we might be in trouble. We can survive another turn at most. They've drawn a lot of stuff, they've drawn a lot of balance. Alright, we're going to block this. We should probably block the Baloth, because I know there's cards in this deck that aren't Baloths, I think. Yeah, that's already done its job, so I'll go ahead and block the Baloth. Take 5. Okay, we got Insatiable Hemophage, which I can play as a creature. We'll actually do this, because it will allow us to tap some of their creatures down.
Powerful cards.
And they won't untap during the next step. We'll also make it a 7/7 now, with the 1/1 counter, becomes an 8/8. We're going to tap both of those down, they won't be able to attack. That actually kills that. So next turn, If he does attack, he'll attack with one of these two, which would be dumb, but he might do it. And we'll see what happens. Yep, that was a foolish thing to do, but we're actually going to block this because it can generate mana. He's getting us with small amounts of damage. It's kind of scary, but we're going to go ahead and play this Death Touch. Now we've actually got a board we can block. So we're going to not attack, because we really need to keep these blockers on the field. He's drawing even more stuff. How many cards do you have in deck? 35. See, it just goes to show you how fast you can play cards in this game and essentially deck out if you're not careful. We're going to give it a page of Life Touch as well. Life Touch. Lifelink, I'm sorry, it is Death Touch and Lifelink. And we're not going to attack. He's going to get 1 damage at most next turn, unless he buffs something. Okay, good. He's not going to. I don't think. He might? Nope, we're moving to combat already. He only swung with 2. That was a foolish mistake. Both of those are dead, and we've still got blockers. We're going to play Boot Nipper with Lifelink so we can start gaining some life. And we're going to attack with Arc of Frogler. Ooh, he's going to block both? That's dumb. That's a really bad decision. But he did it. He didn't want to take any damage. Now, a real opponent obviously wouldn't be making these sorts of rookie mistakes. And then again, if you're new to the game, you make a lot of these kind of mistakes too, so it's not that bad of a deal. Alright, we're going to mutate this on the Boot Nipper. These are just sample games after all. We're going to mutate over Boot Nipper. We now have a 3-3 with Death Touch and Lifelink. We're going to swing our Lifelink boys and actually keep our 9-9 blocker. We're not really going to be able to kill him this next turn anyway, so we're going to go ahead and gain some life back just to be safe. We've got a vanilla 2-2. What we in the game call a bear, a 2-2 for 2. We're going to return it to his hand and kill him this turn.
Aww.
See how we were able to turn that all around? Mutate is a very powerful mechanic that allowed us to turn the entire game around. Alright, we'll go ahead and play one more game with another deck, and I think that'll be it for now. So, let's see here. We could do 2 Adventure, which is Knights and 1/1 counters. We could do Company of Knights, which is Knights and burn spells. Let's go ahead and do... Well, no, we've already seen red. Let's do... We've already seen white as well. We've seen green, blue, or black, blue. Let's do... Well, let's do Starry-Eyed so I can show the power of enchantments. I haven't really played with many enchantments yet, so... This should be interesting. Alright, we've got some enchantments in hand already. We've got a Shambling Suit, which is pretty good, and a Brine Giant, which potentially is a 1-drop card if we're good enough.
I'm your spot. Let me show you.
Capture Sphere, that's a useful one. Go ahead and play a land, we'll pass. Try and keep it. Looks like they're probably playing Lifelink or maybe just regular white. We'll find out. It's a cleric though, so my guess is they're probably playing Lifelink. Oh, what am I doing? Cast blockers. My turn. Let's see, what is this enchantment? Create an 8/8 blue Kraken. Tap all non-land permanents target opponent controls and gain control of target permanent. That's a pretty good card to just be in the pre-constructed deck. That's pretty good. We're going to go ahead and wait till next turn. And we're going to either Capture Sphere or Vanishing Light their card. As many enchantments as we have on the field is good. We want to get as many enchantments as possible, whether they target us, our opponent, or a passive effects. Because our creatures in this deck are going to let us play off of enchantments. So we're going to go ahead and Vanishing Light, Power Priest, because it can be a scary card. Every time they gain life, they put a 1/1 counter on it. That can get out of control real fast, so we're going to banish it. Banishing Light banishes it until Banishing Light leaves the field. So it's pretty decent. It counts as an enchantment, it stays on the field, it banishes their creature. It's pretty good. Oh, Banishing of Fable's a good card too. Alright, so we've got 3 land and only 3 land, unfortunately. So we're going to go ahead and Banishing Light their other creature.
Aww.
So you might be wondering why I haven't played this Shambling Suit as a creature yet. Well, I'm waiting to get the power. I'm waiting to get the power up on Shambling Suit because it gains 1 power for every artifact or enchantment you control, and also for every enchantment I control. This gets cheaper and cheaper. So we're going to Capture Spear, the Loxodon Linebreaker.
Super awesome.
I can't tell if that's sarcastic. So it won't untap now during their untap step. They'll have to manually untap with the card effect. Finally, we drew some land. Nice. We're going to play Shambling Suit, which is a 3-drop, 3/3 now, and it's about to be a 4/3. Actually, it's about to be a 6/3 because we're going to enchant it with this. 6/5. Oh, it was only 1 turn. I thought it was an enchantment. My bad. My bad. We're going to go ahead and block this, which, unless he has a card in hand to do something, I don't know why he swung with it. Yep, tactical advantage. But it's dead too, so no big deal. Okay. Turn target no land. Okay, we need to save that for a while. We really need to get Kiora on the field, but we'll get Brine Giant right now.
Those are some powerful cards.
It's a 5/6 vanilla. So, oh, we got Thirst Remaining. Cool. We're going to go ahead and draw, and then hopefully we get an enchantment. Oh, it was all land. Yikes. We're going to go ahead and discard a Plains and an Island. 1 blue and 1 white, I guess. We're going to play our Plains. We're going to swing for 5 with our big boy. With our big boy! Alright, we drew into a plane. Perfect. Alright, we're going to go ahead and activate Kiora Best's BC die. We'll get an 8/8 Blue Kraken Hexproof, which means they can't target it with any spells. And then we'll attack for another 5. See how quickly these enchantments have come to our aid and really buffed us right now? Enchantments can be very powerful cards if played at the right time. Alright, we'll play all the glitters. We'll play it on our Brine Giant so we can buff him quite a bit. And then we'll go ahead and play Banish into Fable. We'll tap this, and we'll return it to their hand, and we'll return that to their hand.
Oh.
We'll make 2 tokens. We'll swing, and we'll win the game.
You got me.
Alright, so now that we've demonstrated how different decks can function, different strategies and things, I'll go ahead and end the video by saying that pretty much any deck can run pretty much any strategy. There's support for it out there, no matter what it is, I guarantee you. And this game is just a lot of fun. It's very open community, very good community, lots of nice people if you want to play in real life. If you don't want to play in real life, you have the alternative of playing Arena, which again, I will list the links for the PC, Mac, and I don't know if it's on iPhone, but I know it's on Android. I'll list those versions in the description. I'd like to thank anyone who decided to watch this video. I know it was a little lengthy, but I feel like it was pretty comprehensive. I know that there's probably a lot of advanced mechanics and things I didn't get into, but pretty much we've gone over most, if not all, of the basics, and I feel like I've done a pretty good job. So I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you found it entertaining. Hope you found some knowledge in all of this. And I will hopefully see you in another video. So thank you for watching, and goodbye.